Chairman Castle, trustees, President Kerwin, Provost Bass, Dean Goldgeier, graduates, families, and friends. Before I start my speech, I would like to say that I arrived here very intimidated, but when I heard these students, I almost ran away. I can't match their eloquence, so please forgive me. I'm deeply grateful to you, President Kerwin, for your kind invitation to this remarkable event. I feel deeply honored by your kindness and generous hospitality. Let me first congratulate you, Mr. President, and all those connected with this great university as you prepare to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the founding of the School for International Service. That happened upon the request of President Eisenhower, who wanted this university to provide academic and professional training for young women and men and prepare them to wage peace. Of course, General Eisenhower knew everything about waging war, but the President Eisenhower, also knew how much need there was for learning to wage peace in that age of the Cold War. Today, the School for International Service stands proudly as one of the very, very best among its sister academic establishments in the world. Congratulations to you, Dean Goldgeier, dear Jim, to the faculty of the school, and to all your predecessors for this outstanding success. The School of International Service has lived up to the challenge and exceeded expectations. In 1963, it was the turn of President Kennedy to come to this university and deliver his memorable commencement address. President Kennedy also knew a thing or two about the perils of war. Remember the disaster of the Bay of Pigs less than 3 months after his inauguration, and the Cuban Missile Crisis in September and October 1962, when he and Nikita Khrushchev had their fingers on the nuclear button, ready to blow up the entire planet. That message of President Kennedy is as relevant today as it was when it was delivered more than half a century ago. Now, graduate students, I salute you and offer all of you very warm congratulations and good wishes. You have achieved what you came to this university to achieve. Whether you are having more studying to do or are ready to move to new pastures, you will see that what you have got from your years here will be hugely valuable to you. Congratulations also to you families who have supported and encouraged these young people throughout their years here with love and patience and often with great sacrifices. Honorable families, the success of these graduates is also your success. And last but not least, congratulations to the moms who are here today. Happy Mother's Day. And you all, sons and daughters, do you need reminding that you will have to take your moms out for a treat tonight? Ladies and gentlemen, for me, the mere fact of being here at this ceremony is a privilege. To be given a degree along with you, new graduates of this school, is a huge honor and the source of much pride. Of course, I did not work for my degrees the way you have. You are graduating first, and then you will move on to what I am confident will be successful careers. I, on the other hand, have first had a long career and then came here and was so generously given this degree a moment ago. The degree you have earned is an expression of confidence that you are now well equipped to move on to the next stages in your life. The degree I have been granted is an extremely kind and generous recognition that in that long career of mine, I might have got one or two things right. I am told that it is customary during events of this sort for the speaker to look back into his or her career and try to find a few words of wisdom to share with the graduates. Giving advice is something I'm not very good at. For now, I would rather tell you 3 stories that may be of some interest. The first one is from America, the second from Afghanistan, and the third from South Africa. My American story is about moral courage and political vision. In July 1957, exactly at the period when this school was being set, the young senator from Massachusetts, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, spoke from the floor of the Senate about my country, Algeria. Our struggle against French colonialism was at a critical moment at that time. Western countries, including the United States, supported the French war on our people. The senator went against the tide and dared express sympathy for our aspirations to freedom and independence. He dared express criticism of both France's brutal repression and American political and material support to those colonial policies. The senator was criticized at home and abroad, especially in France, of course. But he stood his ground and explained why he thought it would be right for the United States to support the just struggle of a colonized nation for freedom, even against a close ally like France. There was not only courage, but also vision in that attitude. And the senator was fully vindicated when the French finally accepted a negotiated settlement with our liberation movement, and our country became independent in July 1962. Because of that speech, President Kennedy enjoyed and continued to enjoy immense respect and admiration in Algeria. That is why, at that period, we wanted the first visit from our new president to be to the United States. President Ahmed bin Bella, our president, came to Washington on the 21st of October, 1962, and he was very warmly received by President Kennedy. As President bin Bella, and remember, 21st of October was right in the middle of the crisis of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Bin Bella was flying directly to Havana. He was asked by President Kennedy to tell Fidel Castro that the United States would settle for nothing less than a total dismantling of the Soviet military buildup on the island. This story of John Kennedy and Algeria is a story of courage, the courage of a rising political star who decided to break a lance for people in a faraway country who were suffering injustice at the hands of one of America's own friends and allies. Kennedy had the courage to face up biting criticism from the media and from political elite at home and abroad. He had the courage to stand by his convictions. It is also a story of vision, the vision of a man who had a sense of history and knew that the era of colonial domination was coming to a close. My second story is from faraway Afghanistan, and it is about humility. In the early fall of 1998, the Taliban, who were controlling most of Afghanistan, killed 9 Iranian diplomats in the northern city of Mazar-Sharif and rounded up 100 or so Iranian nationals, most of them truck drivers. Iran massed 200,000 soldier troops along the border between the two countries and threatened to invade Afghanistan. I was sent by the UN to help ease tensions and avoid another war. To make a long story short, I met Mullah Muhammad Omar, the Taliban leader, who, after 4 years of discussions, accepted to release all the prisoners to me, and we sent both the bodies of the 9 slain diplomats and the prisoners back home. A near certain war was averted. The Iranians were grateful. I was warmly congratulated by everyone at the UN, and frankly, I was rather happy with myself. However, a couple of years later, I received an intriguing message from a young man called Rahimullah, who had been the very able interpreter during my meeting with Mullah Omar. The message was that he, Rahimullah, wished to apologize to me because, he said, he had not translated faithfully everything I had said during that meeting. And why on earth did he do that? Well, the message said, the interpreter wanted my mission to succeed because he did not want Iran to invade his country. As he feared that some of the things I said might offend Mullah Omar and lead to a break of the talks, he changed quite a few words from things I have said. And Rahimullah further said that he also changed some of the things that Mullah Omar said out of fear that would offend me. Amazing, isn't it? After all, my mission, of which I was very proud, did not succeed thanks to my negotiating skills and cultural sensitivity. It is that young Afghan who was in his very early 20s who succeeded in manipulating the feared Mullah Muhammad Omar and the supposedly seasoned diplomat and gently made us achieve success without realizing why we did so. I'm really very grateful to Rahimullah for that unforgettable lesson in humility. My South African story is, I'm sure you expect that, about Nelson Mandela. Meeting that giant of a man, that outstanding leader, talking to him, or rather listening to him, on a few occasions has been a highlight of my life. When he was released from detention on the 11th of February, 1990, Mandela made a speech in Cape Town before a crowd estimated at about 2 million. The crowd in Cape Town and tens of millions of people who listened or watched his speech on radio and television were ecstatic. The man who had been arrested in August 1962 was remembered as a strong, angry young man, the founder and leader of the military wing of the African National Congress. The man who came out of jail more than 27 years later is a smiling, gentle, white-haired old man. And listen to what he is saying. He is not complaining about the harsh conditions of his detention. He is not seeking revenge and retribution. No, he is reaching out to the white South Africans who had treated him and his people so very badly for so very long. He wants reconciliation, and he is appealing to everyone to work together to build the new South Africa. And listen to the concluding words of his speech in Cape Town. I quote, "I have dedicated my life to this struggle of the African people. I have fought against white domination and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons will live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal I hope to live for and see realized. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." In the noisy, festive atmosphere of that warm evening in Cape Town, few people noticed that Mandela had actually said, before uttering these words, that those were the concluding words of his first speech, these words in his first speech as a free man were the very same words that he had used to conclude his submission when his life was staked during his trial in 1964. The words of the iconic leader of 1990 were the same as those uttered by the prisoner of 1964 when his life was hanging in the balance. That was leadership at its highest. No trembling with fear in 1964 and no playing up to the crowd in 1990. The same message when a death sentence was hanging over his head and when the mantle of power was about to be wrapped around his shoulders. I had led UNOMSA, the United Nations Observer Mission in South Africa, which had observed the historic election that brought Mandela to power. And I was present at the profoundly moving ceremony when Mandela was inaugurated as President of South Africa on May 10, 1994. It was a day of joy and a day of hope. Very significantly, Mandela had invited as a personal guest to that ceremony one of his white jailers during his detention on Robben Island. But of course, not everyone was happy with the new South Africa. 3 weeks or so after Mandela's inauguration, Eugene Terblanche, a notorious white supremacist, was asked if he would now seek to meet the new president. He did not miss his word. He said, "I do not recognize Mandela as the president of my country. I will never accept a black African as the president of South Africa." Naturally, journalists rushed to Mandela to get his reaction. Mandela said something to the effect that Mr. Terblanche was free to express his opinion about the president or about anything else. And what if he nevertheless asked to see you? The press wanted to know. Would you see him? Mandela did not hesitate. Yes, I would. Terblanche is a citizen of South Africa, and he has every right to seek an appointment with the president of his country. A few days later, I went to say goodbye to President Mandela. He took me to his house for lunch. Just before leaving him, I simply could not resist telling him I did not understand his reaction to these rude, vulgar comments of Terblanche. As a matter of fact, I told him, look, I'm from the other end of Africa, up there. I would never shake hands with Terblanche. How can you say that you will see him? Well, you at least ask this question politely, Mandela said with a smile. The youth in the ANC were much less diplomatic in the expression of their condemnation of my attitude. But look at our situation, he added. Do you think that Terblanche is the only white South African who is in denial and refuses to accept that the president of South Africa is now black? I suspect that many white South Africans find it difficult to adapt to the new situation in their country. How are we going to help them accept that I am their president? More than that, they need to understand that in all probability, there will be many other black presidents after me. And he concluded, we can do that only by being patient and by showing understanding, respect, and tolerance. Each time the subject of South Africa comes up, the same thought comes to my mind. And what if Mandela's message had been heard in 1964, not in 1990? And Mandela had been elected president in 1965 or 66. We all would have had the inspiration and the leadership from this man for 30 years, instead of which he was president for only one term. It's a recurring dream with me. There is nothing wrong with such dreams, but one has to come back to reality. And in today's reality, there is no Mandela out there waiting to inspire you and perhaps lead some of you young students of the American university. But who knows? Maybe there is a young man or woman right here in your midst, in the School of International Service, to provide leadership of the kind Mandela did. and to have the creativity Rahimullah had, and to have the courage and vision of President Kennedy. That man or woman is perhaps one of you young SIS graduate of 2017. Come to think of it, I think that man or woman, that leader, I am positively certain, is each one of you, if you really want it and you have the will for it. So go and be the leaders from tomorrow on. I am sure you can. Thank you very much.